Hello, readers. Dr. Myron Rolle is a former NFL safety, a Rhodes Scholar, and a neurosurgery resident and global neurosurgery fellow at Harvard, Massachusetts General Hospital. He's also the founder and chairman of the Myron L. Rolle Foundation, a nonprofit organization that supports global health, wellness, education, and other charitable initiatives benefiting children and families in need. And he has just told his unique and inspiring story in a new book titled The 2% Way: How a Philosophy of Small Improvements Took Me to Oxford, the NFL, and Neurosurgery. Dr. Rolle, thank you so much for the time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. It's a real pleasure getting to speak with you. So I guess a basic first question for context and something that's obviously a part of this title: what exactly is the 2% Way?
Well, the 2% Way is a philosophy that was brought to me by my football coach at Florida State University, Mickey Andrews. He got it from his coach at University of Alabama, Paul Bear Bryant. It's this 2% of growth, 2% of small practical steps of improvement every single day. And he wanted us to do that in every practice, whether it be how we tackled, our stamina, our ability to disguise blitz packages, our ability to high point the football. He challenged us every day to just get a little bit better, because if we did that, then we would be in position to compete against the Virginia Techs or the Miamis or the Floridas or the Clemsons of the world. And he would actually take this mindset and bring it to the locker room and write on the board, Myron Rolle 1% or Myron Rolle 2%. And the guys on the team would vote, well, did Rolle get 1% or 2% better today? And it was a way to keep us accountable. So I sort of extrapolated this ideology to life. And so that any chance encounter that I have, any book I read, any conference I attend, any person I meet, I'm trying to grab 2% from that experience and add it to my own journey so I can be a better version of myself. And in this book, I really talk about how you can take larger, seemingly overwhelming problems and you can break them down 2% at a time and have those small victories, small wins every day, so that a month, 6 months, or a year from now, you can look back and see the level of improvement that you've achieved. And so we're excited about it. I use my story arc to tell this message about this 2% way. And we think it's going to really resonate with a lot of people.
I completely agree with that. And early on, you write that to fulfill your potential and find your place in the world, you really need to understand what you want to achieve and why. And this requires you to examine your foundations. What do you mean by examining your foundations?
Well, I think, we have to know where we're going, and we have to really understand our purpose and our place here. Whether it's to care for someone from a medical standpoint through health, or whether it's to help mentor, or whether it's to teach, whatever it may be. I think it's important for us to see the value that we have in this world. We all do, we really do. And I think the way that we sort of get to that point is definitely reading, definitely using other individuals to help be your mentors, help guide you through, leaning on family, leaning on people who love you and want to see you rise and succeed. And so it's incredibly important to sort of know where you're coming from. See, my family and I, we came from the Bahamas, and my parents really put a firm foundation of education in our minds early, so that there was no question about what came first, what was the premium, what was the the number one sort of item on the list of things that I wanted to accomplish in America. And so understanding that, and understanding that I had the ability to think through complex problems, and understanding that I loved the brain after reading about Dr. Ben Carson and all of his wonderful exploits he did at Johns Hopkins as a pediatric neurosurgeon, I knew that once I was done playing football, the next move in my life would be neurosurgery, trying to help people, trying to cure people, trying to be a difference maker in medicine, in and out of the operating theater. So yes, examining your foundation, knowing who you are, knowing where you want to go, and then the process of taking small steps every day is, I think, a great way how you can get there and help other people along the way too.
I do want to get a little bit more into how gifted hands impacted you shortly, but first I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your parents. They both seem like two incredible people on their own, much less to come together as a team to raise you and your siblings. What was your mommy like growing up for you?
Mummy was amazing. Mummy is she is a rock star. She's a superhero. All the superlatives you could think of. There was a time in my life, about 8 or 9 years, and I read about this in the book, when we were relatively poor. I mean, honestly, we lights were shut off. We had to borrow money from coaches or neighbors. Holes in my clothes, holes in my cleats. I remember one time when we had to actually keep the car on as she drove us to practice, and just stayed and waited because she was scared if she turned it off, it wouldn't start back again. And this was prior to Uber or anything like that. So, but to make all ends meet, she worked 2, 3 jobs, cooked and cut our hair right in the kitchen prior to school, and always gave us $1.40 for lunch money. Never felt like we didn't really. I didn't really know I was poor until like after, until I was like, okay, yeah, now I see where we were coming from. But when we just continue to try to keep the family afloat, and then when Daddy finally ended up, getting a job and then making a lot of money with his job, then Mommy was able to pull back from her responsibility. But she's fantastic. Both my parents are amazing. They focused on education for us. They were strict on discipline. They wanted to make sure that we loved each other, loved our brothers. We loved Christ. Our faith was really, really important to us as well. And we always stay connected to being in the Bahamas, or at least the culture in the Bahamas. Even though we grew up in New Jersey, it was important for Mommy and Daddy to have us that the mindset of, even though we left, we still have to think about home, think about how we can better home, think about how we can connect with home, think about how we can still eat the same foods that we eat at home. So I love my parents for that as well. But they're amazing. Been married 50 years. They're phenomenal, and Mommy is the champion for sure.
And there's an interesting anecdote that I think helps explain just the wisdom that your father would impart on you throughout your life. According to this book, if I'm remembering correctly, you have been directly called the N word 2 times in your life. The first was in grade school, I believe, on a school bus that led to you chasing after and throttling the kid who said that horrific word. And afterwards, his family tries to take you to court as a result. How did your dad react to all this news of how you had responded to being called something so despicable?
He was upset that it happened, and he sort of understood why I reacted the way I did. But he was obviously ashamed, embarrassed, and wanted me to think about handling these situations in a different way. That there has to be a moment where we understand that these kind of reactions and responses could lead to deleterious consequences down the line, and that's about maturity, and that's about growth. It's about progress. That's about putting behind us childish things and moving into adulthood in a way. And so, yeah, my father is a fighter. He's not conflict averse at all, but he realized that this moment, for us to really achieve everything we wanted to achieve in the United States of America, we could not respond to every racial epithet or every single slight that we heard. So that was a really, really important lesson for me and my brothers to learn at a young age.
You described him as stoic at one point in this book. Do you think you've taken on his stoic persona as an adult?
I do think so, and I think that's been very helpful because it gives me the opportunity to observe, take in, and absorb all of the facts, all of all the situation, and then make a deliberate, calculated decision. When I'm faced with a complex case in the hospital, I leave emotion behind and say, okay, what can we do to best help this patient, best help their families, and really optimize this experience. And emotion has to be put away for a second, and then we move into facts, we move into training, we move into fundamentals, we move into the evidence, and we move into the advantages that a hospital like Mass General Hospital has as far as resources and personnel and even equipment to help make this case go the way it does. So learning that from Daddy was huge. I don't stay disconnected from the case or from situations in a way where I feel like I'm a robot, but I suppress it enough where I'm able to allow facts and my cerebral thinking to lead, and then I keep my heart and keep my passion into it through that. It sort of follows right behind, and it's been a good formula for me.
Yeah, that's a misconception about stoicism that I think is finally starting to get busted now. It's not that you're a robot. You have emotions. You recognize your emotions. You just don't let those emotions linger and affect other decisions going forward, right?
You're absolutely right. Especially in something like medicine, where you have to continue to keep yourself even and keep yourself sort of leading with intellect and leading with evidence-based medicine and practice. That's incredibly important. Families want you to be invested into the care, and we are, but they also want you to do the best you can. In my opinion, my best performance happens when I'm able to block out or suppress the background noise and just focus on how I can help treat you, how I can help get you back to your family, how I can help get you back to your job or to walking a dog or whatever else is that you love to do outside of the hospital.
A few answers ago, you mentioned Dr. Ben Carson's book, Gifted Hands. Why is this one of the most influential books in your life?
So, leaving the Bahamas and coming to America, my parents and my brothers wanted me to have these inspirational figures who look like me in front of me. Paul Robeson, W.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Kofi Annan, Nelson Mandela, Malcolm X. But the story that really resonated with me was Dr. Ben Carson's story. Black man from a modest, background, not very affluent, so very similar to my formative and adolescent years. Parents focused on education, saw that too, had a temper like I had as well, but just moved all that stuff aside and continued to his upward trajectory, where he was able to ascend and being the youngest chair of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins, and then separating these two twins who were conjoined at the occipital lobe and having both of them live. First time that case has ever been done. I mean, a over 15 hours surgery with multiple providers and multiple professionals coming in to help with that case, but it was a phenomenal thing. And so seeing that, seeing his story, seeing what I could possibly become outside of sports or football in particular, seeing that the brain was just such an amazing thing that he talked about, how this organ can control speech and temperature and heart rates and respiratory rates and move my fingers and move my toes at the same time, or help me dream or help me think about different things that are 5 years ago and think about it like it's happening today. I mean, just amazing what the brain can do. That just sort of drew me in. And so from that point forward, he went onto my wall as my academic hero. And I knew that once I finished playing football, I was going to move into the space of the brain, of the central nervous system, and then neurosurgeon sort of became the obvious target for me. And so I'm glad, because even though it was something that I thought about when I was in fifth grade, now as a 35-year-old with 4 children and a wife, I'm still as fired up about it like I was when I first read his book in fifth grade.
That's really cool to hear. So we've focused on the intellect so far, but all the while, even as a kid, you knew that you were an exceptional athlete, and this led to you getting opportunities as an adolescent. It started with you spending, I think, your freshman and sophomore year at Petty Prep School, and you really didn't fit in at Petty Prep School. This was mostly a bunch of rich white kids, and here you are, a black kid from the middle class who was maybe given some respect because of your athletic prowess, but people didn't think much of you intellectually. Having said that, it's interesting that you got into one fight while at Petty Prep, and it didn't necessarily involve having to beat up entitled white kids. What exactly happened there?
No, yeah, I mean, it was difficult. Sometimes the enemies come from within, and you know, it was a difficult situation where in high school I was a good student and a good athlete. Uh, Tried to speak with the proper English as my parents would want me to. Tried to be, a good, responsible, and respectful young man. But to a group of young people in our school who looked like me, who came from disadvantaged backgrounds as well, and they were on scholarships, kind of like I was. They saw me as maybe a sellout, or as we say, an Uncle Tom in our Black community, where you're not real, right? You're not official. You're not one of us. You think you're better than us. And so the way to sort of challenge that is either throwing jokes or maybe even throwing hands. And this young man put his hands on me, and I told you I have it. I had a temper. I still had it. And my daddy, I called him to ask him, what should I do? Am I going to get suspended, or like what? He said, go get that young man. So daddy, not conflict averse, said, go get him, gave me the green light. And I went and beat up this kid too, but he looked like me. And it wasn't the white kids who were, very rich and had parents that looked at me in sort of denigrating ways at times. It was someone who looked like me, who was coming from the same background. It was black on black. It was two people who should have been joining together to, find solace in our own community, but also try to achieve in this phenomenal academic environment. It was us butting heads, and so the fight went on, and thankfully neither one of us really got in trouble after it. But we've since become friends. We're cordial now, me and that young gentleman. I don't have any animosity towards him. I think it was just, a misunderstanding between two people who were trying to get to the same place, but didn't know how to get there and didn't know how to express and coexist with each other and trying to get to those same places. So that was a learning experience for sure.
So after 2 years at Petty Prep, you end up spending your last 2 years at Hun School of Princeton. Why was the time there so much more valuable for you and your growth as a person?
Well, we started winning a lot in football, and I had a really good relationship with the football coach. And winning cures all, as they say. The whole vibe, the whole environment, the energy was much better at that school. Both schools are academically superior. They are remarkable institutions. I would love for my children to have a chance to go to one of those prep schools. But the athletic side, I think, was certainly tilted towards the Hun School. It's a it's a boarding school, but it's got a lot of day students, and it has sort of a public school feel to it. It has the little public school edge to it. So I think that, along with the winning that we did on the football field, along with my relationship with my head football coach, Dave Dudek, I think all of that together really sort of solidified this place as a spot that I wanted to be at, and a place that I can find my rhythm, my pace, and prepare myself for the next level at Florida State, Texas, USC, Notre Dame, Michigan, any of the 83 schools that offer me scholarships coming out of high school.
Every major program offers you a scholarship. You are the number one recruit in the country as a safety. What ultimately sold you on Florida State from the time that you spent on your official visit in Tallahassee?
Well, the real answer I'll give you, because this is a real interview, was, one, Samari went to Florida State, my cousin, Samari
Yeah.
Rolle. I love him. I watched him forever, and he is a hero of mine. Two, Bobby Bowden was great, sort of like a grandfather figure. And my parents trusted that I can go down there and he can lead me to be a better human, a better Christian. He was incredibly involved in fellowship of Christian athletes down at Florida State. And matter of fact, our first visit, he like opened up his big Bible on his desk and started talking to me 30 minutes about Christ, as opposed to X's and O's or cover two or cover three or fire zones or whatever the case may be. But I think the reason that really tipped Florida State over the top was the fact that if I went to Michigan or Northwestern or Stanford or Duke or Notre Dame, or Cal Berkeley, I'd be another smart student athlete, another smart football player. But if I went to Florida State University, I'd be the smart football player, and they would put their resources behind me to achieve the Rhodes Scholarship, or to achieve a Fulbright or a Marshall or a Truman, or to meet Jeb Bush or Charlie Crist, the governors of Florida at the time when I was in school, or just do wonderful things. And that's exactly what happened. As soon as I got there, I was in front of boosters, I was in front of the trustees. I sat on a board of trustees to interview for our athletic director. I was meeting all these important, distinguished people, especially Jeb Bush and Charlie Crist. Met them multiple times, even met Rick Scott when he was a governor, and spent some time in his office. I started my foundation in the Big Bend area. I got to work with the Seminole tribe of Florida. I was on billboards, on institutional commercials. I think they really wanted to see me have success, because the academic reputation of Florida State wasn't as hot, right? It's not as hot as maybe University of Florida in the same state or the other institutions that I mentioned. But they said, here's a guy who we want to push, and we know he's got the potential. And when I won the Rhodes Scholarship, I remember the president of our university saying, Myron Rolle is winning this scholarship, but not just for himself, for us as well. He's got the Florida State on his back. Like this is going to help our reputation. And I've talked to many fans before when they get into sort of competitive conversations with Miami or Clemson fans or Georgia fans or whatever fans. They say, well, at least we got a Rhodes Scholar and you guys don't. So like they throw that out there. So I knew Florida State would like me to be that person for them. And I knew I can get something from FSU as well. So it was a really cool, synergistic, symbiotic relationship that we had. And it was a blessing. And I loved every minute of going to Florida State.
So needless to say, all these years later, nearly 20 years later, you still bleed garnet and gold.
All day. Not only do I bleed garnet and gold, but my brothers end up going there. My kids now have FSU, no girl shirts, no boy shirts. I'm all in FSU. I went to medical school there too. So it's a place that really runs through me. And I block out every Saturday to watch them, whether I'm in Boston, in Harvard. I'll be on rounds looking on my phone to see what the boys are doing. I love the school and the environment, the vibe, the city of Tallahassee. It's been really good to me and my family.
Don't want to end up too far off course here, but do you have confidence that they're close to turning things around there then?
I do. I've met Coach Norvell, and I spent a little bit of time with him. I think he's a great leader, and I think that it took some time for the guys to buy into his style, going from Willie Taggart, who was a little bit more player friendly and sort of understood the backgrounds that a lot of players came from who Florida State recruits, and that Mike Norvell is coming from a small school, not small school, but smaller school, Memphis, than Florida State. He's got a sort of a grinded out mindset. He's always been sort of that, like, we're gonna outwork you, and work is going to be the equalizer, right? Like this what we're gonna do. And now the guys realizing it's not about the flash or the swag. We are not FSU of the Deion Sanders era or the Chris Winkie era or of the work done era, whatever era you want to say. This is now Florida State who we have here today, and our ability to get back into the center spotlight is going to be through the grind, through the work, and I think the guys are buying into that. So I'm excited to see what the product on the field looks like this year.
Good luck to you guys. We're dealing with our own struggles here in Austin, so hopefully both programs could get it going again at the same time. Now, you discuss a number of epiphanous moments in your life. One such moment happened during your college career at a San Francisco Denny's late at night prior to the bowl game that the Seminoles were playing that year in San Francisco at the Giants AT&T Park. What happened, and how did it affect you going forward?
Yeah, so my freshman year, and I was coming off a really, really stellar year. Honestly, I was ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year, freshman All-American in every publication you could think of, and I love breakfast food. I mean, I love Waffle House. I love Village Inn. I'm all in Whataburger, breakfast all the time. I love it. And so one night I just wanted to get some breakfast on my own. I do like moving around solo. I go to movies alone. This is my space to sort of collect my thoughts. And so I went to this Denny's in San Francisco. I sat down and immediately was just struck by the waitress that was, waiting my table. She was this older Asian lady who just looked like she had pain and a story on her face, a story of hurt, a story of loneliness, a story of disconnect, a story of fatigue, just everything. Just seemed like it was all painted on her face. If her face was a canvas, then all of these emotions and all of these feelings were just wrought onto her face and onto her body and her energy. And it immediately hit me. I didn't know what to do. I was trying to eat my food that she was giving me, but I got no joy in the breakfast. I had no joy in the food. I had no joy in that space. And so I left and started crying. I broke down and just started crying. And I called my brother. He didn't really know what to say to me at that point. I'm bawling on the phone with him. Then I called Mickey Andrews, the D coordinator, the one who taught me the 2% way. And this was late at night, almost like 10 or something at night. And his wife is in the room too. And he said, yeah, come over, Myron. I asked him if I can come over. So I go to his hotel room. He's on the 10th floor. I think I'm on the 5th floor or something like that. I can't remember. But his wife goes into the bathroom. I don't know this, but she's in the bathroom. I go into his room bawling, like tears everywhere, snot, just like can't control myself. I'm trying to explain to him how this woman who I don't know, did not talk to her, did not get her name, did not listen to her story, but I just felt there was something in her spirit that was tugging at my spirit. And I didn't know how to explain that feeling of just emotional, just outbursts. And he was telling me, Myron, and he comforted me. He said, Myron, I think that's the Lord telling you that he wanted you to reach out to that woman. He wanted you to say something to her. He wanted you to bless her, pray for her. It's okay to have these feelings. I was expecting my rough and tough coach to like slap me and tell me like, get on with it. You're better, you're tough. But he was very peaceful. He was calming. He was comforting. He was understanding. He put his hand on my shoulder. I love Coach for that. I mean, I don't know if I've ever loved anyone like I've loved Coach prior to that, or like a non-family member. But that moment said, this man is more than a coach. He's a father figure. He's a leader. He's a friend. He's a brother in Christ. And I remember going back from that room, going back to my hotel room, and then his wife calling me up and telling me, Myron, I heard everything that you said, Mickey, and you said to Mickey, and I want to let you know I'm proud of you, and let's do something. Let's go together, dress up tomorrow, and let's go meet this woman. Let's go say hi to her. So I was like, oh, thank you. Like, this is not it. Like, we're not finished with this, right? So we go have our team dinner the next day. I dress up, she dresses up, he dresses up. We're all in our Sunday best, and everybody's like, why y'all dressed up? We said, don't worry about it. We're going. So we took a cab to that same Denny's. Unfortunately, that Denny's was closed that day, and I never got a chance to speak to that woman. But if she's still around today, I would tell her that I love her, and I would love to pray for her. it was a very existential sort of moment for me to sort of come into this space of understanding my feelings, understanding the pull that humans can have on each other, even if you don't know them or know their name. It really moved me to the next level of being a leader. And I appreciate my coach for helping me through that moment, and his wife.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Another epiphany was during high school at the Hun School of Princeton, which was right across the street from Princeton University. It was there that you first saw a bronze statue of Bill Bradley, who was identified as a Rhodes Scholar on the plaque below his name. As a collegiate, you lived a life that allowed you the chance to pursue a Rhodes Scholarship, as you talked about a little bit earlier. Rhodes Scholars are judged by 4 standards. To summarize, it's literary and scholastic attainments, fairness and success of outdoor sports, a litany of qualities that boil down to empathy and putting others before yourself, and to be a leader in a manner that can turn into a public duty as your highest aim when it's all said and done. In an effort to prepare for this, you started a program within the Seminole tribe. What exactly was it?
Yeah, so the Seminole tribe of Florida, they are down in Okeechobee and Miccosukee, South Florida. We obviously use their name as our mascot. But Florida State has got a great relationship with the Seminole tribe. If you are a average to decent student, you can get into Florida State with a free ride, and you provide a lot of opportunities to further grow as a leader. And we often do a lot of events that honor and celebrate the unconquered spirit of the Seminole tribe of Florida. So it's fantastic. And in thinking about ways that I could be more than just an athlete, whether I can get outside of my athletic bubble, looking at the statistics, reading articles, I just saw that so many American Indian tribes were ostracized and marginalized, especially even in the state of Florida. I said, this group was looked at as drunkards, maybe suicidal, violent. Now their children are becoming obese and hypertensive and diabetic, not childhood diabetes or type 1, but like type 2 diabetes early when they're like 12 or 13 years old, based on poor diet and things of that nature. And so I said, this is an issue. This is a group that I think is incredibly vulnerable. And at Florida State, if we have an opportunity to connect with this group, maybe there's a way where I can play a part in their achieving of their health goals and their fitness goals. And so I had a chance to meet with the chief of the tribe down in Okeechobee. I met with one of the main elders, Louise Gopher. She's a phenomenal woman. Met with her family. I went and learned some Creek language down there. I taught a summer course down there. And then I created the Our Way to Health, this anti-obesity program at Pemieta Emahaga, which is the Brighton School on the Okeechobee Reservation. And it was fantastic. We had academic curriculum and athletic curriculum, and we broke them up in teams, made it competitive, and the team that won got to come onto the field with me at the intermission of our Virginia Tech Florida State football game at Doak Campbell, and they got introduced in front of all the crowds, 80,000 people. They loved it. To this day, I still communicate and stay in touch with those American Indian kids, and it was a blessing to be able to, think about more than just myself. When you're a student athlete, you're like, oh man, I just got to get to the NFL or get to the next level, or find a cool girl, or wear nice clothes or get money or whatever. But to me, it was like my moment at Florida State was meant for this. I'm at Florida State. I'm wearing Seminole on my shirt. I need to do more. I need to think more. What can I offer to this group? Well, I can offer health. I can offer wellness. I can offer how to be a better version of yourself. And so it was a blessing to start that, and it became a part of my foundation. And then once the U.S. Department of Interior heard about this, they actually adopted my program and placed it in the Pueblo Hopi Indians of New Mexico and Arizona. So it became sort of a national program, and we were very grateful for that.
You have to feel pretty proud about that all these years later, Myron.
Yes, very proud, very proud. I mean, God's been a blessing, and I have some wonderful people behind me to help the vision come true. I'm often somebody who thinks about things and tries to just sort of picture where I'm going. The Bible talks about where there is no vision, people will perish. But none of this is possible without the process or without the backing and footing of now my wife, my parents, my brother, my 4 older brothers, people like Samari, who have been in my corner from the beginning, who've loved on me and showed me, so much support to buttress me forward. And so, yes, absolutely very proud of it. But I know that it's team effort, and it's a beautiful thing to have that.
So the process often involves failure. Honestly, the people who succeed the most in life fail a lot and learn the necessary lessons from those failures. It actually took you two different attempts to become a Rhodes Scholar. What happened the first time that derailed this process, and what was the lesson that you took going forward from that?
Wow, yeah, that's the first time I applied for the Rhodes Scholarship. The judges were not ready to push me through. See, in the process of getting a Rhodes, you have to make it through your home institution first, and you have to have the necessary qualifications. I think like over a 3.5 GPA, or write a personal statement. Then you have to do an interviews, series of interviews, and I was doing that at my home institution at FSU, and you know, I just wasn't ready, you know, and I wasn't ready for the questions that they were going to ask. They baited me to go down a road, and I did. And so the issue here, and I write about this in the book, you know, growing up in America, but in a Bahamian household and going home to the Bahamas all the time, you often hear the elders talk about the ills of our society. Like, why is the Bahamas turning from being this land of sunshine and freedom and paradise to a place with some violence and some corruption and you know, some really high crime? And then you would hear every elder say it's from our immigrants. The immigrant population is coming in, particularly the Haitian community. And so hearing that, just keep hearing that over and over again without putting any of my own thought to it. I just said, okay, this must be how it is, right? I'm just taking what the people who I respect, my aunts, uncles, my pastors, my barbers back home, everybody who I love in the Bahamas, this is what they're saying. Okay, well, let me go from it this way. And so when I went to this Rhodes Scholarship interview, one of the questions I was asked was, you know, why is the Bahamas? What are the ills of the Bahamas? What's the problems of the Bahamas? And immediately, it's almost a knee-jerk reaction, sort of a reflex in a way. I spouted out this, you know, hatred of immigrants and this you know, it was this other people. It's not us. It's them. It's not us. And as I'm saying it, I'm like, man, this really sounds like a bigot. This really sounds like a separatist. This really sounds like not me. And I knew that that wasn't what I should say or how I should say it. And it wasn't even right. And the judges picked up on it, and they sort of beating me down. They sort of needed their way into this conversation and got me to even dig deeper that hole that I was digging. And so they weren't ready to push me through based on that sort of perspective. And I had to take the 2% way process to get better from that moment, to think about who I am, to start to become my own man and start to think about problems or issues using my own intellect, this cerebral power that God has given me. Let's use that and use your own experiences that you've had with outstanding Haitians to really inform how you think about crime or how you think about immigration in the Bahamas. And so that was a good way to move from a very tragic moment to now moving into a position where you can be a viable you can show that you're a viable candidate for the Rhodes Scholarship. So the second time around, applying that 2% methodology, applying that 2% mindset, getting a little bit better every day, and making sure that I become my own man. In that process, I answered the questions much better. They were assured that I would do well. They pushed me through, put me to the southern region of Rhodes Scholars, and I was accepted as a finalist. And the rest is history. Won the scholarship, and it was a beautiful thing.
How exhilarating was it to learn that you had won that Rhodes Scholarship?
Very exhilarating. I won it the same day we were playing the University of Maryland, November 22nd, 2008. Still remember the day. Our team was up in College Park, and I was in Alabama, Mountain Brook, Alabama, right outside of Birmingham, and interviewed. They said I won a scholarship. Told my teammates, told my parents. They're going crazy. And then I get a private plane that was approved by the NCAA to fly from Birmingham's airport, private airport, to BWI. Get there. When I get off the plane, I had to get back on the plane because Florida State's like media crew wasn't there yet. So I had to like reenact like walking off the plane again. I was like, hey man, I'm gonna be late for this game. You guys are doing the most. But I walk off the plane and I get a private escort. Police is driving me, and we get to the stadium, and my parents are there to give me a huge hug. Dr. Jackaroot is there in the sidelines. I love him. I used to watch him all the time on ESPN. He's interviewing me. Getting to the game in the second quarter, we're beating up Maryland, just beating them up left and right. And so I come to the game. I think I only had like 2 or 3 tackles, but you know, it was my services on that field weren't even necessary because I think the team was riding such an emotional high after me winning that scholarship. They doused me with a ice water, and it was a wonderful day. It was a win for many reasons. One, on the football field for our team, another ACC opponent that we beat. It was a win as a student athlete, around the world, around the country. People can see you can combine these two passions. And it was a win for my family, my friends back in New Jersey, my family back home in the Bahamas. It was a beautiful day.
So this left you seemingly with a decision to make, Myron, because you had played well enough through your first 3 years at Florida State that you had the option of turning pro after your junior year and were a likely first-round pick in the process. But Oxford was obviously there staring you in the face as well. And for you, as somebody who values the intellect as much as you do, it was kind of a no-brainer for you. And it wasn't like you were dissing the NFL in the process, but you were delaying that by a year to go pursue excellence through the Rhodes Scholarship. What ultimately allowed you to sleep easy with the decision to pursue the Rhodes Scholarship versus the NFL over the course of the next several months?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, I thought about how I can do both. Maybe start with the NFL and then Rhodes Scholarship. That's a little known fact. I actually asked the Oxford and Rhodes committee, can I postpone taking the Rhodes so I can go play in the NFL right now because I'm projected as a high draft pick? And they said no. It's either take it or not. So with that in mind, it made the decision a little bit more complicated. I put my name into this scouting service that underclassmen can at FSU, and they said I'd be a late first guy. And I called up Samari in Baltimore, what his Ravens were saying. They said if I ran fast, maybe late first, early second. I called up Antrell. He was in New York with the Giants, and same thing. They said maybe second round guy. So I was feeling very confident that I was going to be a high draft pick and things were going to work out. All the mock draft boards had me top 32. So it was exciting, but ultimately, I think what pushed me to go to education at Oxford was that, the NFL was going to continue to be there. And I've always placed a premium on the word student before athlete. And here's my chance to do it at a higher level. Plus, when other people see my story, maybe they can find inspiration from it, like I found inspiration in Dr. Ben Carson's story. That here's a guy who, had this money and high draft pick and fame in front of him, and he said no to it because he wanted to further his intellect, wanted to find a social injustice and try to change it, wanted to immerse himself in a new culture, build networks of other outstanding leaders around the world who become his friends and become his close confidants, and he wanted to move forward. And now I've seen the benefits of that decision because many parents have come up to me and even young people and say, I had you on my wall as a child. And I'm like, that sounds like what I did with Ben Carson. I use your story to inspire my young athletes or my young students, or I use your story to inspire my daughter or my son to do more in their life. And so the decision had reverberating impact to generations that initially I didn't think of, but eventually it became to fruition that this was something that was bigger than me. It was beyond me. So if I had to make the sacrifice of not going to NFL right away, I'll stay in shape and try my hand at it. And I did. Came back to the Senior Bowl and played well there. Did the Combine Pro Day, got drafted in the 6th round instead of the first, made $60,000 in my signing bonus instead of 4 or 5 million, was a 53rd man on the roster, practice squad instead of 22nd and playing. I had coaches in the Titans when I got drafted by Tennessee in the 6th round who said I can play for 8 or 9 years. They know I have the talent to do so. But for whatever reason, the stigma of the Rhodes Scholarship and being smart and not really feeling like people not feeling that I was committed to football, that prohibited sort of my success in the NFL because they felt that I would leave at any second. Why would you invest money, a draft pick, or a starting position on this gentleman or a roster spot on this guy who can leave in mid-season? And then we have to sort of scramble to find a replacement for him. So a lot of things were happening at the moment, but that Rhodes Scholarship was so valuable. That if I had to make the decision again, I'd make the same decision because it led me here to this point where I'm healthy and doing well and still able to be a role model, thankfully, for young women and men who see my story and draw inspiration from it.
Consider you idolized him as a kid. It had to have been pretty cool to get to go to church with Dr. Carson that last Sunday before you moved to England. And he offered up some really sound advice in the process. What exactly did he tell you?
He did. So I was at church with him and his wife Candy, and I was like, really expecting him to tell me something as far as neurosurgery technical, right? So like maybe this is how you hold the tissue when you're trying to resect the brain tumor, or this is how you position the patient's head when you're trying to enter the ventricles with a shunt, or something very, very specific to neurosurgery. Because I wanted to know how I can be a better neurosurgeon one day in the future. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like him. And he didn't speak about medicine at all in that respect. He talked about people. He said it's always remember to be nice and say hi to the lunch ladies and janitors, because they're people too. And that really hit me, right? Because sometimes you walk through life and you think that the president or the CEO, the chairman of the department, are the only ones that you ought to be nice to or say hi to. These individuals who sometimes people look past, these people sometimes people look through. They have stories. They are real people. They have genuine interest as well, and it keeps you humble. It keeps your feet on the ground. Sometimes the MD label, people think they have a God complex, or you're like the mighty doctor that can do it all. But in reality, we're all humans. We all have ups and downs, good days and bad days. And when you're able to connect with people on a very human level, it brightens up your day. I go through my hospital at Mass General Hospital thinking what Dr. Carson told me, think about it all the time. And I say hi to everyone, right? Especially those individuals who are materials management, food transport, lunch ladies, or whatever the case may be. And my co-residents look at me like, how do you know all these people? I'm like, because I talk to them, right? Like, because I say hi to them, right? Where it's very busy. So I can understand you just trying to get from point A to point B. So you might miss it. But I see a lot of these people, especially in our hospital, not to get too like nuanced, but our hospital, the people who are working those service positions are typically look like me. They're Black and brown. And so they have experiences similar to mine. So when I talk to them, I dap them up. I talk to them about the Lakers. I talk to them about Jay-Z, Sierra. They're like, oh, we get it. Like, we're talking to you. If I talk to my co-residents about it, who wonderful people, but Yale, Hopkins, Princeton, Harvard, they might not know that kind of stuff, right? So it just feels more at home when I'm speaking to these individuals. And I appreciate Dr. Carson for wanting me to make sure that my feet stay on the ground and that I stay humble and keep a keen perspective on what's most important.
How did you benefit most from your time at Oxford?
I think Oxford was a great place to learn outside of the athletic bubble. It was a great time to just be a full-on nerd and meet some wonderful people who went on to be, or who are now very close friends of mine. Shad White is the auditor of the state of Mississippi. I think he will be a senator of Mississippi, maybe a governor one day. He is that remarkable. He's a Republican, and we have different political stance, but that doesn't matter. I still love him, and we're still very, very close. His political ideology doesn't bother me, but we spent so many nights at his college, St. John, just sitting down talking about, education, talking about sports, talking about paying college athletes, talking about how do we get HBCUs at the same level as the predominantly white institutions, the PWIs. He went to Ole Miss. And it's crazy that we had that conversation on the doorsteps of St. John's College at Oxford, and then just maybe a couple of months ago we reconnected to talk about how we can get Deion Sanders and Jackson State to think about the Rhodes Scholarship, or maybe some of their gifted players. And so these conversations start after a night at the pub in Oxford, and then they come up when I'm a neurosurgeon and he's a state auditor, and we're like grown men with kids and wives, and now putting it together. So someone like him, someone like Aisha Saad, who is literally probably my best friend over at Oxford, from Egypt, Cairo, grew up in Cary, North Carolina, went to UNC Chapel Hill, wears a full hijab, Muslim woman, just phenomenal presence, brilliant. We're still very close to this day. I ate with her daughter and her husband, and it's just remarkable that we are able to stay close and continue to build off of each other too. So those kind of relationships of individuals like Aisha, who is one of the best lawyers in America, Shad, who I mentioned already, Abdul El Sayed, he ran for governor of Michigan, didn't win, but he's an advocate for health. He was the head of Michigan's public health administration. He is a remarkable person too. So it's the people you meet, it's the intellect you're able to accrue, it's experiences you're able to have, some of the port that you're able to drink in pubs and things like that, I guess that works too. But it was a great place, and I really cherish that moment. And for any of my mentees who talk about think a Rhodes Scholarship or some postgraduate fellowship overseas, I always mention how Oxford really changed my life, and they should really highly consider it.
So once you were done with Oxford, you come back to the States, as you just summarized. You end up getting back into football mode. You participate and do great at the Senior Bowl. It was a mixed bag in Indianapolis for the scouting combine. You admit that it was a little bit of pressure, a little bit of just getting terrible sleep that week. And ultimately, you go through the draft process, end up hearing your name called on day 3, which you wholly admit, and it's completely understandable that it's disappointing. And discussing that disappointment, you wrote one of my favorite sentences in this book, Myron. How you move forward from a setback is critical. How did you become better as a result of this disappointment?
I became better by really pouring into that 2% way and thinking about, where do you want to go, Myron? Like introspectively, think reflective of who you are and where you need to be. Yes, it's disappointing. Yes, you might have let some people down who expected you to go high in the draft, or to be walking across the stage in New York City. But at the end of the day, you got your foot in the door, and now it's time to do more with what you have. God gave you this ability. He put you in a place for such a time as this. Now it's time to work and grind. And so the disappointment turned into motivation to continue to work, to continue to grind, to put in the effort, the energy, to use the resources around me, and forward movement. And that process is so valuable, that 2% way process, because it blocked out all of the distractions of some of those sentiments that I was hearing and feeling, and allowed me to hone in and have this laser discipline on, okay, what can I do now to stay here? What can I do to be a better athlete? What can I do to continue to move forward towards my goals after I'm done playing football, in medicine, in neurosurgery, in healing people, in public health and global health, and being a global citizen of the world. So disappointment sometimes jars you and recenters you and resets you to where you need to be. And then the process of small steps, small victories every day, like we write about in the book, I think helps mitigate some of the angst that one can feel when you do think that you're at a low point.
You spent your rookie year on the Titans practice squad. Between your first and second year, you actually took part in a Clinton Global Initiative to combat sexual violence in Congo and Rwanda. This involved literally traveling to those countries to petition their governments and get involved in policy and advocacy. How did that time in Africa change you for the better?
That was a wonderful time. I got selected to go there because I had given a talk in Little Rock, Arkansas, at President Clinton's library. He saw me speak and he was impressed. Next thing you know, he invites me to Austin, Texas, to speak at the University of Texas at CGIU, Clinton Global Initiative U, where a lot of college students will come together and think about how an initiative can help change the world in their corner of the world. I thought it was a phenomenal place. And that experience was funny because I'm there with Nnamdi Asomugha, all-pro cornerback. I'm there with President Clinton. And then I'm there with Matthew McConaughey. And I'm the last to speak at all these people. And I'm like, man, I said, y'all set me up. Y'all set me up. Because everyone's going to want to listen to Nnamdi for sure. Great player. And then President Clinton, he's the man, rock star with his cowboy boots. And then Matthew McConaughey goes third. And then he just throws up the hook 'em, and it just felt like the whole place melted. And I was like, this is not fair. And now they want to hear this little Rhodes Scholar walk up there. Okay, guys, hey, think high, think great of yourself. I don't know. It was rough, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was great. We stayed in touch and we had a great time there. And then from there, he invited me to Aspen, Colorado, to be a part of his team called CGI Lead, where it was me, Jeff Gordon, Ashley Judd, Pierre Garcon, Laura Bush, Usher, Wes Moore, just some really, really phenomenal people. Zainab Salbi, this is an Iraqi lady her family was friends with Saddam Hussein, but then she created this thing called Women for Women International. This is really a great advocacy women support group. So anyway, all of us went to Aspen. We had a little retreat there, and then we all went to Congo and Rwanda to help fight sexual violence. And it was amazing. I went to Africa, East Africa, thinking that I would feel incredibly saddened for these individuals living in this particular part of the world. But I left feeling encouraged because they were not feeling sad for themselves. They said, "This is my reality, and this is how I'm going to make it through." And I was like, it was just great to just see the hope, the power, the pride in the eyes of those citizens in that part of the world. And to take that in with somebody as cool as Jeff Gordon, we're dancing, we're having a good time, we're eating dinner together. It was remarkable. So yeah, it was a fascinating time, and it happened honestly because the lockout was 2011, and so it gave a lot of players extra time to do different things, and I ended up going, and it was a blast.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's still a head scratcher for me that you didn't last past 3 years in the NFL, but there's an interesting theory out there as to why. And honestly, knowing that the NFL was the powder keg that it was at the time, it makes a lot of sense to me. So why do you think your time in the league was cut so short, Dr. Roll?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of reasons, but I think the one of the main reasons is this. I was a smart player who had interests outside of football, especially interest in the brain and neurosurgery. Traumatic brain injury, concussions was a hot topic at the time with the movie Concussion just coming out. I thought that the NFL, believed maybe I had um, a lot of interest outside of the sport, that if something were to happen to me, um, that I would end up leaving the sport, or if something happened to me where I could not go on to be a neurosurgeon, it would provide more of a stain in the reputation of the NFL and how poorly they had managed players, uh, active and retired, with traumatic brain injury and potentially chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So I think it was a confluence of issues. And one thing I knew it wasn't was my talent, right? I did not depreciate in my skill in a year and a half, because every game that I played, I recorded either the most tackles or near the most tackles, and I played very well. And all of my teammates and coaches agreed, Myron, you got 8 to 10 years in you. We can see it. One coach of mine, Dave McGinnis, linebacker coach in Tennessee, told me that he's been coaching football longer than I've been alive, and he knows talent when he sees it. He says you can play 8 years easily. When I got released from the Steelers, that was my second team, and I texted all the defensive backs immediately. All of them called me back. Uh, not because they were trying to campaign or such, but they were so shocked. They couldn't believe what they were reading on the text. From Troy Polamalu to Ike Taylor to Ryan Clark, all called me and said, "You know what? I am shocked. You were balling out here. Everything you did was great. You didn't embarrass yourself. You played well. I can't believe this happened." Just they were sort of dumbfounded that we were taking this moment. And I remember after one of my games, Larry Foote, who'd never talked to me, linebacker from Michigan, never spoke to me ever. Just doesn't talk to people in general. But he took off his headphones, looked in the back of the bus, and said, "Hey, Roll." And I was like, "Oh shoot, Larry Foote said something to me finally." And he goes, "You balled out, man. Good job." Put his headphones back on, and that was the last time I ever spoke to him ever again. So I was like, man, if Larry Foote is willing to take off his headphones and tell me that I played well, and Larry's a all-pro guy, great linebacker, I said, I know it wasn't my talent. I know it wasn't my skill. There was something else at work and at play. But at the end of the day, um, you know, looking back on it now, I think that there was something at work where maybe God was protecting me from breaking up my hand so I couldn't be a neurosurgeon. Or maybe God was protecting me from a serious traumatic brain injury or a CTE so that I couldn't think cognitively through some complex pathologies, disease pathologies that walked through the door at Mass General Hospital at Harvard. So maybe it was a way that I was protected. But if I had to do it again, I would take the same path, going to Oxford, taking that year and a half off, coming back and playing. I made a lot of friends. I made a little bit of money so I could pay for medical school, so I didn't have to be in too much debt with that. And I got out healthy, so I'm able to hopefully have value to the world beyond the football field.
What's your biggest regret about your time in the league?
I think my biggest regret was probably not thinking about concussions and traumatic brain injury as seriously as I do now. I believe that when I was playing, I just wanted to be such a football player. I wanted to direct every conversation towards football. When coaches or beat writers were asking me about, the opponent that we were playing the next day or about a specific coverage that we were doing, I was like, okay, let me talk about that. Great. But if they ask me about Bill Clinton or the Rhodes Scholarship or neurosurgery or concussions or a new article that Malcolm Gladwell had written, like I'm like, no. Let's talk about blitzes. Let's talk about coverages. Let's talk about how we're going to play this quarterback who likes to look off his defenders. I wanted to be all in and show that and sort of remove any semblance of intellect or intellectual curiosity from my space, from my lexicon, from all of it. And so I regret that because I think it would have been a great platform for me to really shine light and advocate for brain health, safety, head trauma, as well as any other thing that I think would have been, very impactful for young people to hear, and for people who were maybe not football fans to experience. If they don't watch football every Sunday, maybe hearing from a football player that talks about brain health, concussions, mental health, CTE, depression, these sorts of things, it would open up their eyes. I remember going into classrooms and telling people that I was a Rhodes Scholar, and they're like, okay, I want to be a neurosurgeon. Okay. I play in the NFL. Oh my gosh, eyes light up and they just get crazy for it. So the pull that the NFL has on this country, on the world, is amazing. And I feel like I did not use it enough. So that's a huge regret of mine.
So after you get cut by the Steelers, you end up going back home to mom and dad, and your mom actually helps you find your way forward post football. She pulls out an old list where you had written down two goals as a kid. One was to play in the NFL, check. The other was to become a neurosurgeon. And so that helps you find that next path post football. You end up deciding on Florida State for med school, and you eventually graduate med school, which is what allows you to select a residency. And for you, the two most important qualities when selecting a residency had to do with community and vision. Why is this, and what was it about Harvard, Massachusetts General Hospital that fit those qualities so well?
Well, I think that the community at Mass General, Harvard was strong in that it felt like a locker room again. It felt like a team again. It felt like everyone was working on the same page, and there wasn't a very malignant or negative culture that made you apprehensive about getting into work every day. Because if you're going to go through the doldrums of residency, where the hours are long and you're beaten up often, people yell at you, you make mistakes, you feel bad about those mistakes, you're trying to make it through. You want to go to a place that's supportive and that you feel a sense of a communal experience. And I felt that when I went up to Boston and went to Mass General Hospital. Those walls, those providers, those nurses, the food service individuals, materials management, security guards, they're all amazing. Literally, I feel like if you can take Mass General Hospital and just replicate it anywhere else, your experience will be very fruitful, especially as a trainee. So that was really important for me, and I wanted to make sure that it was a place that I could see myself being the pediatric neurosurgeon that I wanted to be, being a pediatric neurosurgeon that also extends his care to the vulnerable populations, especially in places that matter to me, which were like the Caribbean, for instance. I started my Caribbean Neurosurgery Foundation to try to step in the gap and the void of access issues that exist for people who live in remote parts of the Caribbean. My aunt died in 2010 after being hit in the head by a car. She had a traumatic brain injury. She was in our home family island of Exuma. She laid there for about an hour or so and then went to our local clinic and did not see a neurosurgeon, did not see a nurse, did not get an MRI or a CT scan, no diagnostic workup. She died 7 hours after not being seen by anyone. And so that's a preventable death that was frustrating to me in 2010. And now, as I grow in my neurosurgery career, I started my own foundation to try to build capacity and upscale the neurosurgical system in the Bahamas and around the Caribbean, so these preventable deaths don't happen anymore. That timely, equitable access to care for the most vulnerable populations occur. And Mass General Hospital has wholly supported me in this. We went down to Antigua and Montserrat, did a bunch of surgeries down there. I've been to the Bahamas, I've been to Guyana doing surgeries there as well. It's really been amazing that program at Mass General, my department, my chair, Bob Carter, and others do have the vision, support my vision of wanting to, be a global neurosurgeon, a global pediatric neurosurgeon in particular, who sees value in not only saving a life on the operating table, but also changing systems so that more people can be affected and uplifted and have a chance at a meaningful life.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking what happened to your aunt, but that serves as a catalyst to help motivate you to make sure that it doesn't happen to somebody else who has a family member who has to sit there and suffer like that over the course of 7+ hours.
That's right. And the golden window for urgent or emergent traumatic brain injury or neurosurgical care is typically 4 hours. That's what the academic literature says. And when you get outside of that, your prognosis is dismal. I mean, your chances of survival go down exponentially. And so that's why access and communication and getting systems aligned and having diagnostic imaging to work things up and having people with the education on the ground to sort of stabilize these patients and maybe extend that window by doing some very simple maneuvers, right? If somebody has a brain injury and you know it's a brain injury because the left side of the body's weak and their right pupil may be a little bit bigger, so they have a brain bleed on this side, which is pressing on the motor strip and the sensory strip and all the different functions of this side of the brain that controls the opposite side of the body. If you know that, then if you leave the head of bed up maybe 30 degrees, you can have the internal jugular vein sort of drain that blood away, gravity help, and that reduces intracranial pressure. If you can start some anti-epileptics, some anti-seizure medications, Ativan or whatever, you can reduce seizures, which we know from the academic literature, from evidence, says reduces the chance of death or current or long-term morbidity after traumatic brain injury. So there's some things that you can do right away that can extend that 4 hour window to maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 hours until the definitive neurosurgical care comes, where you get that patient transported to a neurosurgical facility, that you can take off the skull, you can evacuate the blood, you can put the skull back on, that patient can live. And so knowing that there are ways that you can save lives on the ground, if you're in Exuma or Anagua or Mayaguana or part of Guyana or part of Trinidad or part of Barbados that doesn't have a neurosurgeon, if you know these things as an EMT or as a nurse or as a frontline provider, then you can do your work in sort of helping us save lives. And so that's what our foundation is about, and that's the sort of push that we want to inject into the region that I think needs it sorely.
That's incredible. Congratulations on getting that started, and good luck continuing to grow it going forward. You do a great job of describing the evolution of your relationship with your now wife, Latoya. What does your wife mean to you?
She means everything to me. Latoya is she's phenomenal. Pediatric dentist, Christian, mother, wife, sister, daughter. She holds many titles, but to me, I think her best title is just being a best friend and someone who believes in me more than I believe in myself at times. The reason I wrote this book was because she talked to me and said, Myron, I believe in you and I believe in your story. I think you need to put it on paper. And I was telling her, man, I'm going through residency. It's cold in Boston. No one wants to hear from a resident. It's tiring. Like, what am I going to say? Anyone's going to want to listen to? And she says, look, every time we go out to eat or we get emails and direct messages, people always saying how your story is inspiring them. And I remember how you told me that Ben Carson's story inspired you. Now it's time for you to do the same. I believe in you and do it. And every time she believes in me and I'm like sort of wavering, it always comes true. And that's because she's a prayerful woman, because she knows me better than anybody else. And it's phenomenal. And we met through a mutual friend and we were always distant, right? She didn't live in Boston, but we'd always spend time together. She'd fly to Boston or I'd fly to wherever she was practicing as a dentist. And now we have 4 beautiful children together, 2 sets of twins, boy-girl twins. One are 21 months and the other ones are 3 weeks old. So we're like brand new in it. Her mother lives with us and we have a nanny, a night nurse. My mother lives not very far away. Mommy is 30 minutes away or so, daddy as well. So it's a blessing to have her. She is everything. And, having life now, doing life as the head of my own family, but with her right next to me, it's just, it brings it all together. It makes it all that much more rewarding.
Did you say 2 sets of twins?
2 sets of twins, yeah.
Oh.
Zora and Zayed are the oldest, and then Zanzi and Zafar just born 3 weeks ago. So 2 sets, boy, girl, boy, girl.
So you talked about the first set in the book. I am blown away the fact that you had a second set of twins. Myron. I got to, even though you're athletic, you're very smart. I think the underrated element of this entire story of yours up to this point is that you apparently have super sperm also.
Yeah, I don't know. Something's happening, man. It just it makes us nervous to think about what we can do in the future. She's like, Myron, let's wait a couple years before we even think about it. I said, yeah, that's fine. I said, I'm okay with that. But it was crazy when we found out that it was going to be another set. I think the OB-GYN, like, she got unprofessional for a second and she started cursing. She was like, oh my God, like, what is going on? Because she has never seen that before. And obviously we didn't expect that.
Yeah.
We expect like maybe just one, because I knew she was pregnant. She had the stakes, she was pregnant. So I said, okay, maybe one is on the way, but two, and then another boy girl. It was just remarkable, all natural too. And Latoya was such a champ through it all. I mean, carrying those kids and having back pain. She's not a big woman, so like her stomach got huge and it was just tiring for her. And she was ready for them to come out, and they did, very healthy. And so we're just blessed. God's been good for sure.
I've got a 7 and 5-year-old at home, and it is truly one of the most miraculous things watching your wife deal with that. And you're just kind of the helpless guy who did the one thing in the beginning, and you try and help in ways that you can, but ultimately you are a complete waste of space a lot of the time.
Exactly. You're exactly right.
All right, last question, Myron, because you do still watch football. You love your Florida State Seminoles. I love my Texas Longhorns, and college football is my favorite sport. It was about 10 months ago that we finally got a change on name, image, and likeness to allow college athletes to profit in an industry that reaps billions of dollars per year. Long time coming. And despite the fact that we have a lot of people claiming that the sky is falling now, because there's always going to be an inevitable learning curve, this is a better place to be than all of this happening under the table. For you, what do you think the best way forward is with regards to NIL, its impact on college sports?
I love the idea. I think that's it absolutely makes sense. I remember my brother went to school in Jamaica, Queens, New York, at a school called St. John's, really good in basketball. And they had a player there named Marcus Hatton, really, really good player. And I remember hanging out with my brother one time in the city in Manhattan, and we're walking downtown, like, about Times Square, and there's a huge billboard that said there's only one man dash Hatton, right? Like his name, and his number was number one. And it had a picture of Marcus Hatton, making a layup or doing something crazy. And I was like, man, I said, this guy is in New York City. I wonder how much money he's making from that, like from that big billboard in Times Square in New York City with his name, with his jersey, such a cool ad. What is he getting from that? And and I was in high school at that point. I was at Hun. I just went to visit my brother when he was at St. John's. And I was like, man, this is unbelievable. From that point forward, I realized, it's a huge business and everyone's making something except for the athletes. So I appreciate the fact that athletes are now having an opportunity to earn, especially those who come from disadvantaged and marginalized communities. I had several teammates that were sending some of their scholarship money, their Pell Grants, home to Miami, Florida, Polk County, Florida, to Duval County, Jacksonville, to take care of their family because they really didn't come from anything. And now they have an opportunity to do this. I think it's important. One thing I would say that I would love to see is just the continued equity of NIL deals in the women's sports as well. I'm I feel very strongly that women's basketball, track and field, all the women's sports, Olympic and non-Olympic sports, should have the same level of opportunities. And there should be a mechanism someone smarter than me can figure out how to make sure that women are on the same playing field and have those same opportunities that some of the men or some of the more visible sports get: college basketball, men's college basketball, college football. Because what you don't want to see happen is just the continued disparity and continued gap. You saw the U.S. women's soccer team fighting for equal pay. Megan Rapinoe and those other ones were talking about that, and I appreciate them standing forward to do that. But you had the best players in the world with the best team every single year having to stomp for this to happen, and they barely didn't get it, right? They barely got it, essentially. And so I think you have to have champions for these women from them and from others around them to make sure that there's still noise around here, that we make sure that the volleyball player is getting the same opportunity that maybe a men's baseball player from LSU or Miami or UC Fullerton or wherever gets as well.
Well said. He is Dr. Myron Rolle. The new book is The 2% Way, How a Philosophy of Small Improvements Took Me to Oxford, the NFL, and Neurosurgery. Get it now wherever books are sold. Myron, thank you so much for the time today, and thank you for this important, awe-inspiring book.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks to Gentleman Jesus for the intro and outro music. Hear more of his work at gentlemanjesus.com. And thank you to Joshua Bates for the video editing. If you have any video editing needs, hit him up on Instagram at Forager Digital. Thanks as always to you for checking us out. You can watch, listen, learn, and connect for free at booksonpod.com. For Books on Pod, I'm Trey Elling. Good day.